To the Authority of Love. On this Family Foundation Friday, I'm your host, Greg Williams, joined by our co-host, David Walls from the Family Foundation. Welcome to you listeners and viewers, however you are catching us. And David, welcome to you again, brother. Good to see you again.
It's good to be with you, Greg.
Yeah, we were off last week as far as you and I, but they had a show and program, so appreciate that. And I just have to say, people know I was on the Caribbean last week.
Yeah.
And it was a good cruise. It was a good cruise. Got a great opportunity to teach a ministry, some leadership or a ministry. They were very welcoming and wonderful. The other thing was we had several teenagers in college age, a couple or two, and even a Hindu gentleman that joined us.
Wow.
When we were doing that. So, and everybody requested one of our books, The Authority of Love, and we were able to give them one. So, trust the Lord was working, seeds were planted, we'll trust Him for the fruit.
Yeah. The Lord works even on cruises in the Caribbean. What a
right. Imagine that. He's omniscient.
I'm still just a little jealous, so let's move on, Greg.
Yeah. Gotcha. Right. We'll do that. And by the way, Father's Day was this past Sunday. How was yours?
Man, I had a great Father's Day. I was blessed to have my dad here visiting us. My mom and dad came to visit us from Texas, and we had a good time. Got to go to some soccer games, and we got to visit the Kentucky Capitol. We didn't get to go inside, but my dad and I had a memorable experience as we were walking around. I was walked around and we're looking at the governor's mansion. It just started raining cats and dogs. So we got to take off together, running and try to get a shelter, which wasn't very good shelter. And by the time we made it back to our car, we were soaked to the bone. So a very memorable first time for my dad at the Kentucky Capitol.
Yeah, you won't forget that one for sure. We actually drove through several of those, what we call down on the farm a gully washer.
Yes.
And you could barely see 50 to 100 feet in front with lights on the cars. Yeah. So we had to slow down, but we made good time. It was good. And glad to hear you had a great Father's Day. Hey, we've got we're recording this on Wednesday, okay? So that you know, today, breaking news, praise the Lord for the SCOTUS decision in line with wisdom, common sense, and science. Tell our listeners and viewers about it, David. It's great.
Greg, we thank the Lord first.
Yes.
We thank all of our supporters and listeners and folks across the country that have been praying for a righteous decision in this case. And this was the Skrmetti case out of the state of Tennessee, dealing with the laws that ban gender transitions on children. We've talked a lot about this case, but just to hit the highlights, and then we'll go back through just to kind of remind folks of the significance. But this was a 6-3 decision. So essentially, you had the more conservative leaning justices all together, and the 3 more liberal justices were the 3, but that's a very strong decision, and essentially the Supreme Court rejected the outrageous arguments of the ACLU and LGBT advocates that had actually been arguing, Greg, that the Constitution, the United States Constitution, somehow protected a right to mutilate a child.
Created, first of all.
Right.
Yeah, and then protected.
Right.
Yeah.
But just to back up and remind folks a little bit, this Kentucky in 2023 passed Senate Bill 150 that included a ban on so-called gender transitions on kids, a ban on physically and chemically mutilating a child to do something that we know is not possible.
Detrimentally changing their bodies, right?
Yeah. Well, and look, the reality is the end result is not possible.
Right.
A man cannot become a woman cannot become a man.
There's the science and creation.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, in alignment with that, and to help protect kids from this encroaching radical gender ideology, particularly the transgender ideology that was preying upon children, trying to push them to start taking puberty blockers, then cross-sex hormones, then the ultimate, literally physically mutilating, cutting off healthy body parts. States like Kentucky and Tennessee, and now at least 25 states, had passed state laws to say you can't do this to a child. Right. And honestly, Greg, there's government does a lot of things that it shouldn't do. Protecting kids from being physically, chemically mutilated, that's exactly what government was created to do. And so after those laws were passed, this case actually has a tie to Kentucky. So Kentucky and Tennessee's law, little technical difficulties here if you're watching the video, but we got it covered. Kentucky and Tennessee's law were challenged originally, first at the federal district court level, then it went to the Sixth Circuit. And the Sixth Circuit overwhelmingly upheld Kentucky and Tennessee's laws that are very similar. And we were very thankful for that. But what happened after that is the ACLU then continued the challenge just on the Tennessee law. And that case went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So Skrmetti, that word, that is the Attorney General of Tennessee. So we're very, very thankful for him and his office and their work defending the law. We're thankful for our Attorney General and the work that our Attorney General Russell Coleman did defending the law. And look, I continue to be thankful for the work of the Kentucky General Assembly and so many state legislatures across the country that took proactive action when we started to see where this was heading, and more kids heading down this path and being chemically, physically mutilated, pushing them towards something, as we said, that's not possible. Those laws were put into effect, and essentially that effort was vindicated resoundingly today in this important Supreme Court decision.
On Wednesday.
Yes, on Wednesday. Yes.
So it's 2 days old now. We're loving it even more. But here's the interesting two comments on that, David. Very interestingly, one of them is a biblical comment. The other one is a cultural comment. You said it earlier, and I chimed in with you. Not only are they protecting, but they're actually wrongly and falsely creating rights. And the whole push behind that is, as they did with Roe, was if government can create the rights, then they can control them.
Right.
The only one that gives us rights, this is the biblical comment, the only one that gives us rights is God.
Right.
Right. Now, government is supposed to protect those, and that's what you're talking about. That's what the Supreme Court has done with this.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the reality is, the other side, we see them, they try to redefine terms.
Yes.
In this case, is literally trying to redefine
Falsely
humanity
create,
and biology. But as it relates to the law, redefine terms and say, oh, well, this is a right to health care.
Yes.
Well, one, it's not health care, but two, think about it in terms of the context of the child. And we talk about this some in the abortion context as well, Greg. Children, babies in the womb, children that are growing up, have a right to not have their bodies harmed. And that is a primary
As every
role.
human being does,
Absolutely.
but they're the most vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So let's dive in just a little bit deeper, because I know Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice, wrote the majority opinion that, as I mentioned, 6 justices signed on to. But I do want to point out that Justice Thomas, who's has been a very strong constitutional conservative voice for many years on the court, maybe the strongest. We won't have that debate today, but he had a concurring opinion, which a lot of times the justices can do to add a supplemental argument or something they really want to get across.
Strengthens the precedent, basically.
Absolutely,
right? Yes.
And so really, Thomas goes scorched earth on the so-called experts that were promoting this this nonsense, and he points out one of his quotes in here is, first, the so-called experts have no license to countermand the wisdom, fairness, and logic of legislative choices. So again, getting back to this argument that, look, the state legislatures have the right, our elected officials have the right to make these laws. And essentially what the other side was trying to do is say, oh, well, the experts say, we should be able to do this to kids, and so somehow that should override the constitutional authority vested in state legislatures to protect kids. He goes on
and it should be done at the legislative level, and hopefully we have enough people representing us that would not fall for the so-called experts in the deception. That's basically what he's saying there, so that's strong on a lot of cases.
A couple more quotes. I just got to.
That's good.
This is again quoting from Justice Thomas's concurring opinion. Taken together, this case serves as a useful reminder that the American people and their representatives are entitled to disagree with those who hold themselves out as experts, and that courts may not, quote, sit as a super legislature to weigh the wisdom of the legislature.
Those quotes affect a lot of things, right?
I mean, that has a lot of power. And then finally, the views of these self-proclaimed experts do not shed light on the meaning of the Constitution. And essentially, whether there were, quote, major medical organizations agreeing with the result of Tennessee's democratic process is irrelevant. So
Wow.
now
That's scorched earth for sure.
that is when it comes to an opinion of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And look, that really needed to be said because so much of this debate, Greg, had been centered around these false experts, these false studies, so-called that were pushing this, and we know a lot of this has to do with the big dollar and the fact that once you push someone towards this, you're essentially creating a lifelong person that's dependent on expensive drugs, potentially surgeries, and on down the line.
Yeah, and we know that. That is clear.
Absolutely.
It's already in the few years that this has gone on. We know that it's continual.
Yeah.
The medicines, the infections, the surgeries, all these continue. It's a money pit.
Absolutely.
But it's a money pit that feeds the so-called experts and their doctors and whatever. And that Paul said to Timothy, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And that's what we're seeing. Now, in line with that, and I think this strengthens this, David, the Senate now has, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and even last week when I was gone, the big, beautiful bill is in the Senate now. What are you hearing on that?
Yeah, some encouraging news. As it relates to ensuring that the ban on taxpayer funding for abortion providers for Planned Parenthood and a ban on paying for gender transitions.
Yeah, so harming the kids again.
So what we have seen is at least the Senate Finance Committee starting to unveil its portion of the bill has made it clear that they're going to retain these important prohibitions on taxpayer funding of abortion, might even be strengthened a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a lot of work still to do on this bill, and ultimately, when the Senate, if it takes up and passes a bill, it is surely going to be different. The House and Senate versions, ultimately they'll have to pass the same version. But this is encouraging because we have been encouraging, and many of our pro-life allies across the country have been really laser focused on ensuring that the Senate keeps these important defunding of abortion providers, defunding of paying for gender transitions in the bill. That seems to initially be the case. But we encourage folks to continue to go to our website at KentuckyFamily.org, go to our Take Action page. You can send an encouraging message to Senator McConnell, Senator Rand Paul, to encourage them to vote in support. Whatever the final version of the bill looks like, we've got to make sure that we defund Planned Parenthood.
Yes,
absolutely.
Sir. Yeah, and let me say a couple things here. I've said it before, I got to say it again. Keep the prayers going up and keep the pressures going out.
Yeah.
And that's what you do going there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, and Greg, you know this, but we've been praying fervently. We've been asking our supporters to pray over this particular case. And, again, I know we already said, but we just got to acknowledge we thank the Lord that He allowed the Supreme Court to move forward with this decision that we believe is a strong, righteous decision. And look, we have seen President Trump kind of take this ball from the states and start to really hammer and push and say the federal government should be involved on this. And I really believe this decision is going to give even more wind behind the sails at the national level to continue to say, at the end of the day, we've got to root this radical gender ideology out of government and to ensure that kids and really all of us are protected.
Yeah, because remember, June is, and this is what we're in, June is Fidelity Month and Life Month rather than Pride Month, so we cannot be fiscally conservative and socially liberal.
Absolutely.
It will not work. I've said that, I'll say it, I'll continue to say it. Plug the forum real quick, David.
Yeah, we continue to be excited about our forum on Saturday, September 27th with Coach Joe Kennedy, our keynote. Look forward to having you join us.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ. I'm your host, Greg Williams, with co-host David.